Shooter, big deer. I can't believe that just happened. The dead deer. He dropped right where we had him. Yes! Oh my gosh. Holy crap. The great Hambino right here. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today is February 21st, 2023. I'm your host, Aaron Blasey, and my co-host, DJ David Riley, to my left, if you're watching. Anyway, doesn't matter. Today is the next episode of One Giant Mistake, the series that I hear about every day from everybody listening, and thank you so much. I actually had a guy reach out to me and say he loves it so much that he feels like it's like a murder mystery series, and he's waiting to know who's the killer. And I'm like, and as I'm reading, I'm like, that's actually I kind of have that feeling too. It's just these stories are ridiculous, and I'm glad none of them have been told. And I'm glad we're getting to tell them, and everybody can listen to hear them.
Yeah, they're really good, and it's funny because you get a lot more messages about the stuff than I do. But the one that made me laugh the other day, it was on Tuesday, the last time we dropped one, and someone said, "Hey, what's the chance that we could start getting 2 of these in a week?" I was like, "Oh, geez."
Oh, I wish we could. My whole thing is like I'm still getting people like, "Hey, there's this story. Like I got history with this deer," and right now today's episode will be episode 6, correct? Of One Giant Mistake.
Yep.
So it's episode 6, and we've got 3 more to do. Okay. Well, for sure 2. We're on the fence about the 3rd, but there will more than likely probably be a 3rd. And it's been going awesome just because everybody out there listening to it and all the great feedback. We've had the best January downloaded month I've ever had, and February is on track to kill every February I've ever done and kill January last month. So thank you guys, honestly, from the bottom of my heart. And honestly, we're going to do a giveaway here soon. We might do a giveaway at the end of this series just because for all the loyal listeners that love the series and love the podcast, just kind of give back a little bit. And I'm still trying to work out the details on that, but we'll be doing a giveaway soon. But thank you. And today's episode is the biggest deer that we've talked about, and the biggest deer I think that we'll probably talk about on the One Giant Mistake. I mean, we're talking about a deer that's 250 some inches, I think, or close to it. And it's a pretty crazy story.
Oh yeah, it's heartbreaking, and just to think when you listen to the story, and I'm not even going to throw out numbers because you need to listen to the whole thing. But when he's talking about how big the deer was just at 4 years old, it's like, hold on, rewind that, because what'd you just say? Because I didn't think I heard that correctly.
Right. Yeah, and it's wild how the deer, how it was a well kept secret amongst a lot of people, and then the deer started showing his face a little bit more, and then the whole town knew. It's pretty crazy how that stuff works. But and then the events and how, I don't want to get into it. I want to talk about it, but I don't want to get into it. Pretty crazy. So I'll just put it there. But today's episode is with Bryce Dickenson. Bryce is a down to earth cat. Literally just got off work, and he's a union plumber, wasn't he? Isn't that what he is? Union plumber?
Was he a plumber?
Pipe fitter or something?
Like a welder or something, I thought.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, Bryce, if you're listening, I got that wrong. But he literally is still I think he's in the work trailer, and he's like, we're just a down-to-earth guy, loves to deer hunt, and just happy to be here kind of thing. And I'm like, those are the guys I want to talk to, because everybody listening to this is that type of guy. You and I are that type of guy. So, Good podcast. You guys are going to enjoy this one. I don't want to. Oh, we got a question.
Oh,
Gotta do
yeah.
questions.
Here we
Right.
go.
Question of the week. Now, I need to find my. You go first because I think I went first last time.
Okay. All right. We'll make it kind of simple here. Maybe hard to think about. Would you rather shoot a 150 in Kansas or a 135 in your home state of Michigan?
135 in Michigan.
Okay, this means more?
Well, we talked about this with Heath and Zach, and then I think I had a conversation with one of my other friends the other day, and it's like, how long is it takes? It's hard to kill a 130 in Michigan. I've only killed one of them, and it happened this last year. Like, it takes a long time for a lot of people to do that.
Yeah.
135 for sure in Michigan. That is my answer. But yeah,
I like it.
what about you?
Well, I'm taking the Michigan deer. Michigan's like there's this, as much as sometimes we may complain about it, there's a special place in my heart for Michigan, and I've gotten to the point where I almost love that challenge that Michigan brings.
Yep, for sure. Now, the question I have, I'm going to change it up a little bit here. I'm going to shoot off the hip, okay?
Okay.
You're on you're going to Kansas. You're hunting public land, okay? Now, you've never been to Kansas to hunt.
Nope.
You're going. Hunting public land. You've grinded it out for 6 days on what you told the family is going to be a 7-day hunt, but they've given you the blessing to extend it a day or two, okay? On day 6, the action is so far you've seen a couple deer in the distance that you'd shoot. But day 6, you have a deer that comes in, and if he had both sides, he'd be a 180 typical. Okay? But one side is broke off, and all he's got is a beam right here on one side. But the other side is literally, he's 26-inch main beam. He's got a G4 that's over 8, a G3 that's over 11, a G2 that's 14, and he's just a big side on this. Definitely a mature deer. Are you shooting that deer?
Have I seen this deer at all this trip,
Nope.
or is this my
nope,
first?
Just
he's
just
walking
shows
in.
up.
Yeah, I'm shooting. Dude,
Really?
I think so. Especially not. This isn't somewhere that I'll most likely, with the way Kansas is going, I may not be able to be back the following year to try hunting them again. I don't have a bunch of history with them, but you're talking a 180-inch typical, but he's busted on one side, and it's late in the trip, and when I'm headed home after that, that's probably it for the year. I'm probably shooting them, honestly.
Okay. Well, and the reason what brought that question up is my cousin. He went out to Kansas. He's been on Kansas. This was his second year. Honestly, his biggest deer is probably low 100s. He's always just been a Michigan hunter, and he goes out there and he's got this scenario that comes in. I don't think the deer would have been 180, but he said all of 160s, but the one side was busted off. And he's like, I didn't shoot him. And I'm like, well, he asked me, he's like, would you have shot him? I'm like, well, it's all relative. Like me,
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have shot him with like me being where I'm at now. Like,
Yeah.
maybe if I didn't have a couple of the deer on the wall that I do have on the wall, and that was like, but if I was him, there is a good chance that I probably would have, probably would have shot him. But you also have to, I told him, you also have to look at like, what was the reason you're going out there for? You know what I mean? Are you trying to get the experience, or are you trying to get, obviously the experience, but like, are you trying to kill like one of the biggest deer? Because that's a mature deer. He's like, his nose was huge. His body was huge. He was like an older deer. He's like, he just had one side broke off. And I'm like, I can't answer that for you. You have to do what you think is best.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that and there's a couple other factors there. Are we talking day 2 or are we talking day 6? Where it's either or. And let's just say this broken deer. Let's just say his broken side actually isn't broken. But what if he just had like he's got on one side. If he had matching sides, he would have been 180. But on one side, he's just got a giant 90-inch side that's a typical 5, but on this other side he just has a giant spike that's 10 inches. Like, that's still kind of the same. Are you still not shooting just because he's only got a spike on the one side?
I love unique deer. I would have shot the shit out of that deer if he's got a big spike on the one side. Like,
yeah, I do too. And I there's, like I said, there's a lot of factors. Like, is this a lease farm that you're coming back to next year? Like, there's a lot of different things.
Yep.
But my answer would have been completely different if you would ask. Like, I thought you were maybe going down the road of kind of a lesser buck than what I was hoping to get out there. Like, say if you had a goal, like my goal is 4.5-year-old deer. And all of a sudden, like a high-end 2.5-year-old deer comes by on the second to last day. What are you doing? I'm not out there to kill just to kill. I have a goal in mind, type of thing.
Yep. I have to write this down because I got another question for next week. I just thought of it. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. I love these questions, and
yeah,
I think a lot of people like them as well, and people are sending questions in, and also. I don't know if I'll probably keep it anonymous just because I don't know if people want to know that we had 4 people write in and do reviews in the last week. Thank you to you guys. I won't say your names because you can stay anonymous, but thank you. That's greatly appreciated, and we want more. Definitely hit the iTunes or Apple Podcast, and do some views or do some reviews and some ratings. That is greatly appreciated. So partner reads real quick before we get into this episode of One Giant Mistake. Helix Broadheads, the code still lives. It's fall HX10. Get your FJ4s, which are right here. Boom. The bleeders. Or get the FJ2. So go check those out. You can also get a sharpener. You can get them in packs of 3, or if you just want to try them out for, I think it's $24.99, I think. You can get a pack of 1 just to get sent to your house and try to shoot it there too. So check them out, helixbroadheads.com. Latitude Outdoors. We have a code. It's thefallpodcast. Like I said last week, it works for all accessories and Classic 2 saddles, which is the single panel. It doesn't work for the Method 2, and it doesn't work for the new sticks. But use that code, thefallpodcast. Now, you can pre-order the sticks right now, so please do that. Because they're going to start shipping in June timeframe, and they're going to be shipped in the order they get received. So get your name down. You can get sticks in a 1 stick, or not a 1 stick. Like, you can get a stick if you want. Yeah, a stick. I know you got to be careful there. You can get a 3-pack. I should probably look it up. Do you know it right off the rip? I should probably know that.
Yeah, and after you can get the 1 stick or 3, then anything after that.
You can get a 4. You can't get 5. You can get 3, 4, 6, 8, or 12 sticks. So go pre-order those right now at latitudeoutdoors.com. Next, Exodus Trail Cams, exodusoutdoorgear.com. The launch code is up as of right now, but you guys can go check out the new Rival cell cam, the budget cell cam. It's $179.99, 5-year warranty, backed by all the good people at Exodus, making a solid product. Also look at the Render, the OG cell cam that they came out with. Go check them out, exodusoutdoorgear.com. Method Archery, almost said Vector Arrows. It was Vector Arrows. They did a rebrand. It's Method Archery. If you guys want to build some arrows, get them coming because TAC is coming. And you guys might do indoor leagues or start an outdoor league in the spring. Who knows? Use the code FALL10 to save some money there at I just about said vectorcustomshop.com, and it's not. It's methodarchery.com. Lastly, Garmin bow sights. Go to garmin.com and look up the new Garmin bow sight and their watches if you want to get a watch. So, yeah, with that being said, let's get over to this interview with Bryce Dickenson with the next One Giant Mistake. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of One Giant Mistake. Today, we've got Bryce Dickenson with us. Bryce, thanks for coming on, man. It looks like you might be at work, which is awesome. I love that even more about that you just got off work and we're getting ready to talk big deer here. I love that part.
Glad
So,
to be here.
yeah, heck yeah, man. Give us first and foremost who you are, where you come from, and what you do for a living, man. So let's get this thing kicked off.
All right, so my name's Bryce Dickenson. I live in Central Illinois, about a hour, give or take, east of St. Louis, Missouri. Uh, I'm a pipe fitter out of Wood River, Illinois, and so yeah, I work a lot of industrial jobs and etc.
Cool, man. That's awesome. Good deal. So, I mean, you're born and raised in Illinois. You've been there your whole life then?
Yep, that's correct. Grew up here. Actually, have been in the same house uh, since I was about 2 years old.
No kidding.
Hmm.
That's awesome, dude. They're very cool.
Just
So,
as
what's that?
just as home stomping grounds are on there.
I love it, man. I love it. I've only moved about 10 miles from for where I grew up. And, I'm glad I moved a little bit farther because I grew up in a little town. Now I'm like literally out in the middle of nowhere. Like I'm the only house on my dirt road, which is great. And that's how I like to keep it. So, yeah. But cool,
Yeah,
man. I'm ready to, what's that?
let's say that's about how my house is too. Our house is smack dead in the center of our property, and so it's surrounded by timber. Nearest neighbor's a half mile away, etc. So,
Okay, I gotcha. Well, tell me this. Let's get off first about when you started hunting. Like, when did you start as an early age? Your dad get you into it, and there's pretty good deer on the wall behind you there. I don't know if that's your deer or not, but I know the story that we're going to get into today. You chased an absolute giant, one of the biggest deer I've ever even heard of, to be honest with you. So it sounds like you're a pretty diehard. Would that be correct?
that is correct.
With a smirk on his
Uh,
face.
so I go pretty hard at it, but ever since I remember, even when I was a little toddler, I was always ordering, picking out my Christmas presents in that old big Cabela's catalog they used to hand
Mhm.
out. That one
Oh,
that was like
sure.
3 inches thick. But I shot my first deer at 8 years old, but no, 7 years old, I believe. Uh, just a little doe, and that got me hooked, and I've been in it ever since.
Yeah. So would you say that you're trying to chase like the bigger caliber deer, or is it like, is it kind of just whatever tickles your fancy at the time?
Uh, I made a switch. I think 2017, I made a switch. I told myself I'm tired of shooting like those hard 20 inch 8 and 10 pointers, etc. And I was like, I'm gonna try and start shooting bigger deer. And I went 4 years without shooting a deer or shooting a buck until last year, whenever I shot this one behind me. He was a 6.5 year old 8 pointer. I think he scored around 145.
Great 8 pointer.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good looking deer.
Yeah. So, are you a big private land hunter, or do you hunt public at all, or is that, do you just cut your teeth on private?
Yeah, I pretty much do private. I tried public for a little while, and I went in a few months early, set up a trail camera, picked out my tree, go in on opening day, and I run right into someone, and I was like, "Yep, I'm over this." I was as far back as I could get. I had to take a boat like 3 miles down the river, walk 500 yards in, and someone standing right where my tree stand was going to be. I was like, "Okay, I'm done with that."
You're that's me, man. I can like I've been spoiled with public land my whole or private land my whole life, and public land it's like if you hear or smell a guy fart and it's like, okay, yep, I'm done. You don't even have to see him. It's like, there's too many people here. I know David was down in Kentucky this year and he pulled up, thought he was there early, and there was 14 other trucks in the parking lot, and he's like, maybe I wasn't here early.
Yeah, yeah. Just when you think you have everyone else figured out, then they throw you for a loop like that. And it's just like,
Yeah.
what the hell?
Yeah, definitely. So what type of ground are you usually hunting? I mean, we know it's private, so is it more like I've been to Illinois quite a bit, hunted there quite a bit, and a lot of the ground you can watch your dog run for 2 days, sit on a beer can and watch them run for three. So it's like, is it that type of ground, or is it like, rolling hills? Like what kind of type of ground are you hunting?
So where I am is just like a mile or two off the flat prairie, and so we've had some big valleys and rolling hills and whatnot. And where my main property is all timber, and it's got maybe 600 acres of timber connected to it. So it ends up drawing a lot of the bigger bucks in the fall. Uh, Brings them in from all the little smaller sections of timber and stuff in the fall is what ends up happening a lot of times.
Yeah. Now, some of this ground, not to give away too much of, where you're hunting or what you're hunting, but before we get into the story of this actual buck, and I'm not going to say the number of how big he is yet because it's as big as you want to dream of. Have you had deer of somewhat of that really high end, that caliber that have maybe pushed that magical 200 number before?
Yeah, so in just my short hunting career, I'm 24 years old now. Uh, that is the third deer that I've seen go over 200 inches in our area.
Dang.
Uh,
Yeah.
We're in
None
the
went
wrong
quite as
state,
far as
David. We're in the wrong state. Go
Yeah.
ahead,
and
sorry.
I couldn't even count the number of in the 160s to 170s that I've seen in my lifetime. Now, haven't put a tag on any of them yet, but I've seen a bunch of them.
Yeah, yeah. Just being in the area where those deer call home is that's half the battle, right? Like being able to hunt in spots that have that caliber of deer.
Yeah, for sure. And that's part of it though, man. Like when you just said you're 24, like you're young, dude. Like you got a lot of life ahead of you and a lot of hunting seasons. When I was 24, I got to think I maybe only had to cut like one or two deer that I thought was like a decent deer. You know what I mean? It's been the last 10 years that I've really like poured the fuel to it, and you got a lot of time like to you're gonna start putting tags around a lot of those bigger deer. I know you will. I mean, it's bound to happen. You're in the right area. It sounds like you know what you're doing, and it's just a matter of time before you start wrapping your tag around a lot of those
Yeah,
antlers.
yeah.
Oh, I
Especially,
hope you're right.
it's such a numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
When you have, we've talked about this a lot in this series where they areas like this don't have one. They're just not an anomaly in the area where like they're producing big deer year in year out. It's just are they finally hitting that kind of magical 200 number?
For sure. Yeah. Well, cool, man. I want to start in on this story. So this story is about a deer. I do want to say his name. You did name the deer. I don't want you to tell the story about how you named him yet until we get to that point of the story. Whenever you think unless you think right now you should say it, but I think it might flow a little better later in the story.
Yeah.
But because that's when I read that part, man, it kind of made me shed a tear a little bit because that's like really cool that you did that. And but let's get into the story here. Like first and foremost, what year was it? When did you first recognize this deer? And then let's take it from there.
All right. So it kind of started in 2021. Uh, I have a really good relationship with most of my neighbors, so we end up sharing a lot of trail cam pictures and information, and kind of helps me figure out what's going on in the area a little more. And uh, one of my good buddies sent me the picture of this deer in 2021, and he had 18 scoreable points. We were guessing him at 4.5 years old, and guess him around 220 inches.
Mama.
Wait,
No.
hold on. All right.
This is where the
So,
questions start.
okay. So your buddy sending you this picture of a deer. Was this deer, was it summertime when he sent you this picture? Was this deer in full velvet?
No, this was early in bow season, so
Okay.
probably first couple weeks of October.
Okay. So early on in the hunting season, but going before that picture even rolled in, and before October 1 even hit the opener there in Illinois, was there any kind of rumors about a deer of that caliber in or around the area?
Not at that time. Uh, the following year, which we'll get into later, that's a different story. But no, he was like a ghost. He just popped up out of nowhere.
Okay.
How close of a buddy is this to you, or a neighbor? I guess, is he like a good buddy?
He's a good buddy. His property is about 3/4 of a mile as crow flies, and a lot of the bucks end up on me in the winter, end up summering on him. But
Okay.
this deer was not summering on him at the time. It just ended up showing up.
Okay. Yeah. So when you got that picture that day, you at least knew that you had a chance. Like, you were in the game. You're close enough to him that they come, as we get into later October, you never know where he might wander to.
Yeah. Say, I knew I had the chance. I just wasn't completely focused on him that year since I got the information so late. So I wasn't really holding out for him, if that makes sense.
Did you think it
In
was going to be a
2020.
long shot to get him? Because obviously, even though he showed you the picture, you don't have any pictures of him. You've never seen the deer. So did you kind of think it was like he's there, but like, I got other deer to hunt. It's kind of a long shot type deal.
That's kind of how it went, but I knew in the back of my mind that there's a good chance they could end up on me in the heat of the rut, and I ended up getting one trail cam photo of him in 2021, and that was on November 7th, I believe. And
Okay.
that's the only picture I had of him on my actual property in 2021.
Now, when your buddy got this picture, did he ever have any encounters or more pictures of this deer? Or was he living on him? Like, how did that work?
So last year, this deer, he ended up spending most of his time about a mile south of my property. Uh, he was all over in that area for a good portion of the season. There's one guy that I heard of later. He had like 30 sits in on that deer last year trying to get him, and I don't believe anyone actually saw him on the hoof last year at all. Uh, I could be wrong, but from what I've heard, I don't think anyone actually physically saw him last year.
Okay.
So in the 21 season, other than you and your buddy communicating about that deer throughout the fall, everyone else, it sounds like that the gentleman to the south that was sitting on him pretty hard. It sounded like he was probably pretty hush hush about him all fall.
I think he was probably pretty hush hush. I don't really know him too well, but uh, like I said, I try and keep the field pretty level with all my neighbors. So I mean, I wasn't going out and telling everyone in the town about the deer, but I was letting all my neighbors know that, hey, this is kind of going around. So
Yeah.
You must have a really good relationship with your neighbors, because I know what I would have done is not said a word. But I will say this. It's a product of your environment as well.
Mhm.
I mean, in Michigan, a deer that's 220 inches is a state record. That is
Mm-hmm.
unheard of. That is an anomaly. And probably if that deer shows up here around me, there's going to be a lot more people that know about it than me. It's just that's the way it is. And I would have kept it tight to my chest. But being where you're in big buck country, you got 60s, 70s, 80s type deer running around a lot. And this deer, I don't know, man. I probably would have still kept it a secret, but I get it. You know, having a good relationship with your neighbors is key because if you want to kill bigger deer, your neighbors have to be on board. They have to be on the same page that you are, and vice versa. So I understand where you're coming from there. So, what was your plan in 21? Like, obviously, it was kind of like an afterthought. You knew he was there, but there had to been a little bit of you like, please don't die. Please don't die. Like, I don't want anybody else to shoot him.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I'm gonna backtrack to the last question for just another minute, but the kind of my thought process behind sharing information with my neighbors is that they've shared everything back, which
Sure.
actually helped me a lot in
Yeah.
2022, knowing exactly where he was throughout the season and whatnot. But yeah, I was kind of on pins and needles towards the end of 21, especially through the two gun seasons here. I was like, is he going to get shot or because I was tagged out before I shot both my bucks last year before first shotgun season. So I wasn't even in the game.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit worried. But
Yeah. That, and early in the story, you were saying that, you thought that maybe this deer was summering in one area and the potential for him to kind of spend some of his winter months over towards you. Now, was there at all any hope that since you were tagged out and gun season was looming, that he maybe just would come into the area and, like, if you're not hunting, hey, if he can use this area, there's a good chance he survives.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I did, since I was tagged out as the first year, I never stepped in the woods during gun season. And it was actually kind of crazy. What happened is all my neighbors were gun hunting, and I'd get home in the evenings during those first 3 days, and I think I saw probably 10 or 15 deer right, maybe 10 yards past the edge of our yard, across our pond, just all over there, just kind of holding down tight because no one was in there messing with them. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
may have helped out a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah,
Okay.
you're not putting any pressure on it at all. You give those deer 2 days of firearm season, they figure out real quick where to go hide.
hmm
Now, as gun season's going on and as gun season wraps up, are you staying in contact with the neighbors quite a bit? Like, anybody see the big deer? Anybody kill him? Does anybody? Because a deer of that caliber, I don't care what state you live in, could be even Iowa. It's like people will know, and that deer is going to get some buzz. So, were you trying to keep tabs as best you could and just be like, man, where's he at? Where is he living? Is he dead? Is he not? Like, were you trying to do that?
so yeah, I was to a certain extent just checking up on neighbors, but I wrote I get into it pretty hard. I kind of like to know how many does are getting shot, what other bucks are getting shot, etc. As it helps me plan for the future and helps me determine what I'm gonna end up shooting. As I don't like to take too many does out of our general area, and so I was kind of keeping tabs on them, but not nearly as much as I was the next year.
Okay.
But
Okay. So
When you're
basically, go ahead, David.
Well, I was going to ask, with being tagged out and then, gun season coming in and probably having some free time on your hand and you start to wonder if this deer is going to make it and maybe go find his sheds. Were you at all trying to figure out, like, between you and your buddy, that did you guys maybe know who this deer actually was back in the 2020 season? It just, obviously he wasn't probably 220 back in 2020, but were you trying to piece together like any kind of information of, like, is this just a random buck that's showing up, or is this one of our up and comers that he actually just blew up on us?
see, we tried hard, but or a lot of neighbors, they have trail cam pictures. At least I know I have trail cam pictures back, probably 8 or 9 years now saved on my computer, and I looked and looked and looked, and we couldn't piece together the puzzle at all. I mean, it may be one that we had already, but we just couldn't figure it out, really, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But he just threw so much junk in 21 that, I mean, it could have been any typical 10 pointer at 3 years old, and we just didn't know it or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. How many combo points did he have in 2021?
um, I know he had a. Let me pull a picture really quick.
You sent me some pictures. Was all those pictures from 2022?
Uh, I don't remember. Let me see here.
Because the ones you sent me, he is a giant.
He is as big as they get.
Yeah, I sent you all the ones from 22. Here, I'll send you the one from 21 really quick.
And the fact that, I mean, I'm looking at the ones from 2022. I don't want to get that far yet because he's
Yeah.
big.
He's big. Yeah.
He's
I
big,
mean,
big.
the fact that the story starts with him at 220 is incredible, and that's why, when you hear a deer like that, it's either, like you have, like a loner just showing up all by himself out of nowhere, or what he did in the off season. Let's just say that, Bryce and his friend and some of the neighbors, that they, there's probably a high chance that they actually had the deer on camera in 2020, but he made such a big jump going into that 21 season that you can't even recognize who he actually is.
Oh, mama. You kill a deer like this. This deer, I'm going to call him Jersey worthy. David will get that. What I mean by that is, it seems like whenever you kill a really big deer, you get a jersey from somebody. That's all. Oh my gosh, dude. Holy cow. So, okay. Holy tomoli. Were these pictures that your buddy got that sent you? These are the ones?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. All right. Let
The,
me.
the the only picture I had was really blurry and on my property, so
Oh yeah. I
I'll let
mean,
the.
when your buddy called, I'm hoping he called you, right? Like you just can't text that picture, not call your buddy. Like when he called you, was he just losing his shit?
well, so see, my buddy had a similar story, except it got strung out longer with a 207-inch deer. Uh, and that one ended up getting hit by a car. And he ended up getting it and had it mounted. Uh, but so he wasn't really too on edge, and he's shot quite a few very, very nice deer. So he wasn't too jumpy on it. I was pretty jumpy on it myself, but
Let me. I want to explain to everybody. I'll put the picture up in the video, but for the audio version, this deer is a mainframe 6x7, and on the left he's got a split G2. He's got a split G3 that's got a huge fork on it, and he's got a G4 and a small G5 and a brow. The right side, he's got a G2, a huge split G3, a G4, G5, a G6, and a double split brow on that side. This deer's got to be 18 inches inside spread. He's got to have 24-inch beams at least. I mean, this deer is he is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he's other than the splits, he's a typical. Like
Yeah.
like his splits even make him like they're just splits. They're not like inline points or anything like that. Like he's just a typical. It's crazy.
At a 220.
Yeah. Okay, so you get these pictures and you tag out with $2. So gun season happens. Anything happen that you know of? When was the next time you caught word of this deer being alive?
so I actually I started running a pretty decent coyote trapping line last year, and I was leaving my house. Uh, it was probably 4 in the morning as I was trying to get traps checked before work, and I had a set made about a quarter mile from the house, and I rolled up to it, got out of my truck, shined the spotlight, and he's standing right there 60 yards from me, just
The
right
big
past
deer?
my trap. Yeah,
Oh, oh
four
my
in the morning.
gosh.
So
He's
that had to be probably later December.
later December. He was carrying both sides still at that time.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay.
Maybe even January, early January. I can't remember exactly, but
What was your first thought when you put eyes on him that morning?
I was just shocked for I couldn't move until he ran. So
Just roll up there and he's got his foot caught in the track. You're like, oh my God.
He's just got a foothold. He's just doing one of these, like, get me out, get me out. Oh my gosh, that'd have been funny. Oh man. So that's late December. Any other word the rest of that year before shed season?
uh not really. There wasn't a whole lot of talk at the end of that year. No one was really getting him on camera. I knew he was in the area. Just trying to pinpoint exactly where he wasn't too easy last year. And
Okay.
I, I walked every bit of ground I could shed hunting, and I didn't find nothing myself. Uh, but then one of the neighboring properties, this was maybe a mile away, they found one of his sides, one of his
Okay.
sheds. They found the weaker side.
The weaker side as in the 6 point side, not or the he's got a lot more than six on that side, but
I think his left side would be considered the quote unquote weaker, or on the in 2021, I guess his right side maybe. I don't what side did
Yeah,
they find?
yeah.
His
right
right side?
side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
they found the right
how
side?
yeah. Well, because I'm not going to jump ahead here, but I think in the following year, his right side almost looks bigger. But we'll get there later. But so they found the right side about a mile away from kind of your stomping grounds. And how did you actually get word of them finding that shed?
So it was a buddy's buddy that found the shed. My buddy hunted a property that was maybe a quarter mile from mine. This is a different friend, and he knew the kid that found the shed a mile south of us. So is I never even got to see the shed. I just saw pictures of it, and it was definitely him.
Yeah.
But um, they ended up taping that side out at 93 inches.
That was his
I,
weaker
I'm
side, everyone.
I mean, I'm going to just tell you right now, looking at this deer, if I found a shed like that, I would bet the house that someone was fucking with me out there in the woods. Like they, like someone, like someone bought an antler and put it out that they said, I know David hunts around here. I'm going to put this thing out there because they like,
Well, I
I
got
mean,
a couple I can probably send you.
send them. I'll put them right
Hey.
here, bud. Send them.
I will give you
No,
my
but
address after this.
I mean, like you think, like I don't care how that shed's laying, tines up or tines not, like just a crown, like that thing looks like a picket fence laying there.
Oh my gosh. Such a big deer. That's his weak side, scored 92. One
Yeah,
side.
yeah, one side almost 100 inches, and like Aaron said, this thing's basically just a typical.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's
So
that big.
this guy finds the shed. Now let's fast forward a little bit here. Unless something significant happens until good antler growth. If that's the case, I don't want to skip too far ahead. Basically, did anything happen from that time until, you know, July, August when antlers start growing? Anything happen in that time?
Not really too much. Nothing really happened until probably about, I think it was maybe July, whenever I first started getting word of him again.
Okay.
But
When did you name the deer?
so I named the deer um, on I think it was probably the first weekend of bow season in 2022, and that's when I named the deer.
Okay, can you get a little bit into that story? Don't just uh what did you end up naming the deer?
I ended up naming the deer Ross.
Ross. Okay, now give us a little backstory on why you named him Ross. But don't go too far ahead in the story. Just kind of give us a backstory on and why that story came about in that name.
So in it was probably 2020 or so. A friend of mine introduced me to a man named Jeff Ross, and we he ended up we ended up being pretty decent friends, and he was a very he was a very good deer hunter. He probably had 20 plus very nice deer on the wall, and so kind of hung around him a few times, and uh, then in 2021 we that deer popped up, and I was over at his house and I showed it to him, and uh, he told me, he said, "You're gonna kill that deer next year," and I was like, "Oh, I don't." He's like, "No, you're gonna kill that deer next year. You gotta get in your head like that, or it won't. You won't even have a chance." I was like, "All right, I'll give it my best shot." We ended up talking about that deer a lot. He helped me out with a lot of strategies and just listening to old stories of his, trying to take whatever I could from him to try and put it to use for me. And uh, that's kind of how how it all started. And then
Okay.
rolling into early 2022, he got diagnosed with cancer, and he was doing pretty good. They had him on chemo and doing all sorts of other things, and he was doing pretty good throughout the summer. And uh, we get to about July or so, and well, uh, I'll go into that in a minute about finding where he was summering at, and so I started showing him all the pictures and videos and whatnot. Uh, just kind of little spark in his eye every time I'd show him a picture of that deer. And it was bigger than he'd ever dreamed, bigger than I ever dreamed. So, but
Did he ever give you like any advice of like, did you ever ask him an advice or did he ever give anything to like, man, this is something could try or do or how to hunt him or anything like that? Was that ever discussed?
um, I mean his big thing, which I've kind of been adopted, is not touching the does at all, making the does super comfortable, and you do that, and it just brings the bucks in. That's kind of what his approach was most of the time, and that's kind of the approach I've been taking over the past few years here. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it sounds like, with some of the stuff that he was going through at that time, that, he was his deer hunting world was kind of being lived through you.
yeah, that's true, or that's pretty correct. And he uh, he actually stopped deer hunting a couple years before that. Uh, he just I guess he just shot enough big ones that he was just felt like he's done his part, I guess, or whatnot. He had other things he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So,
I get
but he
that.
still loved it nonetheless. He loved deer hunting, hunting for arrowheads, building all sorts of crazy off-road vehicles. He's one of the craziest drivers I've ever seen on a trail. So,
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, that's cool. That's really cool how this buck that we're talking about today, how he got the name that he did, Ross. After your good buddy there. That's really awesome.
So coming in, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
Well, I was just gonna say you left it off in July when you were with Jeff and you were getting pictures of him. I guess did you get pictures of him in July, or how did you hear of him making it and where the deer ended up being summering at?
So I'll send the video over to you now, but a good buddy of mine, well, he sent a couple pictures of this in a field off to three people that he thought wouldn't send to other people, and I find out a couple days later about
yeah,
that's how it starts.
And I was like, so I called him immediately. I was like, hey, where's this deer at? And he was like, how do you find out? And I told him the story about how I found out. And he's like, I was like, come pick me up, show me where he's at. So he came and got me, and we went out there for the first time and watched him eating in a bean field at night.
No,
in the evening, and
just full velvet summer nights, dude.
When he showed you these, or when you got these photos, did you immediately know that it was the deer from the year before?
Oh yeah, it was the splits and his G2s that gave it away.
Okay, and this year in 2022, he grew a big drop time too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's say that was kind of a little bit of a curveball.
He's got a little Democrat hanging there. See, yeah, he got a little dropper.
he made when you talk about a 220, you question if they can even make a jump after that.
Oh yeah.
And for all the listeners, this deer made all the kind of jump that you could wish for.
Well, and I agree with Bryce when he was saying he thinks he's 4.5 years old, because a lot of deer make those big jump 4.5 to 5.5, or it's I don't see him making that jump from 6 to 7 or 7 to 8, or he could have 3 to 4, but man, just a 220-inch deer at 3. I know it's possible, but that is very unlikely,
Yeah, just a genetic freak, man. He is. Sure. That deer is something else, and and anyone that listens to anything that I've ever talked about, they know that I freaking love the velvet period in the summer months. So I was hoping that you guys were seeing this deer in the velvet, because he had to look larger than life.
He's in velvet. I got the pictures. Bryce, do you actually have video of him?
It won't let me send it because it's too long.
Okay, so what we can do is when we get done, I'd like to have the video to put over this, if you don't mind. Mother of Mary, this deer is huge. Like, he's in velvet in the beans, and all I got is screen grabs. Grace, tell me what the first word you were thinking or came out of your mouth when you saw this deer for the first time in velvet.
What I don't know if I can say that word.
Let her rip, buddy.
Let her, as long as it's not the there's one word you can't say, but I think we know what that is. But I let her rip if it's not that.
Oh, I was just astounded. As soon as I saw him, I was like, "Fuck!"
Yes. With that night when he took you out there to go look at him, how far off the road was he?
He was 300 yards off the road.
Yeah. So how were you guys videoing? Did you guys have like a spotter with your phone up to it, or an actual camera? Or what were you guys using?
So he had a high-end camera that he was recording with, and then every other time I went back, I took a spot and scope with my phone mounted to it.
Oh yeah,
that's how I got all the videos.
you have a deer of that caliber show up in your area, man. It would be hard not to just be sitting on him all summer long.
Man,
that's pretty much big. What I did.
Yeah, I don't blame you, dude.
You got to have some killer video of this thing.
Let's say I'll try and get some of the better ones to you later on.
Perfect.
Very cool.
Perfect.
Okay, so you lay eyes on this deer. Some explicits happen. You're you're loving looking at this deer. Now, this deer has got to from there, got to consume you, right? I mean, this deer is how, first of all, how big do you think he was at that time?
I shot high. I shot 250 is what I shot at.
Shot high?
Yeah,
You're not far off though, dude.
yeah, not too far off,
No.
but
I mean, when they're that big, you're just throwing numbers out there. Like you can't really like, yeah, he's 230. You know, it's just like I don't know, really.
Put it this way, Bryce. The only thing that touches 250 in Michigan is the elk up north. I mean, think about this, Aaron. Think about sitting in a truck, you and your buddy, got the spot scope out. One's running the spotter, one's freaking running the camera, maybe a little back road soda in the middle, and you're just like, I don't know, what do you think he is? And he just goes, 250-ish.
Like pounds? Are we talking pounds?
Yeah. Like, are we talking
What?
body weight today, or what are we doing?
Man. Like Bryce, just so you know, we're chasing deer that only have one side of that like that size. Like we're the shed that guy found, we're chasing deer a little bit bigger than that. That's it. Just the one side. They're here, not 200-inch deer, but
Yeah. So
we have,
I got one more question before we move off this day in July. When you did first see him, was the thought in your head going, dude, it's July. He's probably not done growing yet.
I honestly didn't know if he could get any bigger.
He didn't even care at that point. It doesn't matter. He's big enough.
man.
To say my first, you just had to think that this looks like something you'd only see in a high fence.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the first thoughts is it's just too big. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Now,
it happens.
when you were watching him in the summertime, this is a question I find myself asking each one of these guests of deer of this caliber. What was his demeanor in the summertime? Was he pretty social around the other bucks in the area, or was he kind of a loner, just always by himself?
So his bachelor group had two other bucks in it. One was what I'd guess was about 140-inch 8-pointer, but it looked like a year and a half year old next to him. And then an actual year and a half year old was out there, and he got along pretty good with the 140, but that little buck, I watched him chase him off multiple times, and they'd get along sometimes, and they just turn around and run at him.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting to watch.
Yeah. It's when they get that big, it's almost sometimes these stories like they just take on a different personality almost.
Mm-hmm. Now, with this deer being so visible in velvet, would you pull up and watch him in the field and there'd be multiple cars around and guys like glassing him all the time?
No, happened to keep the location of where he was summering under wraps pretty good.
Okay.
And he'd only be out there for the last 30 or 40 minutes of daylight. So it wasn't too hard to keep that part under wraps.
Okay.
Because I didn't really want 100 people going up there watching him push him out of his summer area too early and whatnot. So I wasn't going to give away his location for that.
Now, he's obviously summering on a farm you can't hunt, right? So how long did it take you to be like, I got to try to get permission on here? Or even how far was this from the farm you could hunt?
It was maybe 3/4 mile to a mile east
Okay.
of my property, but I found out later after the previous season that was where he summered the year before. So I wasn't really too worried about getting right in that area because I knew he was going to head my way as soon as I thought he'd head my way towards the beginning of the rut. Ended up coming sooner than that, but
okay. So you roll through the summer watching this deer a lot, and we come into the season. When did you get your first picture of him or sighting on your farm?
it was way earlier than I anticipated. I wasn't even quite ready for him because I was still trying to just tune everything together and make it perfect for whenever he did end up getting there. And I believe it was September 14th
Mm.
when he first showed up. And I wasn't expecting him to show up for another month at the earliest.
Okay. Was he hard horn?
He he was hard horned at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
When he showed up that day, did he show up on like a cellular trail camera or just a regular SD card camera where you had to go out and check it?
A regular SD card camera. That's a deer that ended up making me buy cell cameras later in
Yeah.
the season.
Yeah. Well, how
Yeah.
long? Okay, so that the reason I asked, so now I'm curious. So he showed up on September 14th, but how long after that did you actually check that trail camera to find out that he was actually in there?
It wasn't too terribly long after, just because I was in there finishing up, uh, tweaking deer stands, getting them perfect, making sure my food plot was in good shape. So I was still in there at least one day out of every weekend up until bow season. So I was checking it once a week, and so
Mhm.
it had to be a couple days later that I checked it. So
Okay, yeah. So he wasn't in there, and then you weren't just sitting on him and not knowing anything about it. You knew within a couple of days, but when you popped that SD card in that camera, and that first picture showed up on September 14th. What was your first initial thought? Like, where you think, oh shit, he's in the ballpark now.
yeah, I was super excited the first time I saw him. I was probably as excited just to get a picture of him as I would have been to shoot any other buck. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was shaking, I was jumping for joy, doing all sorts of things when I got that first picture. But I didn't believe it either. But
What were the inner circle that you're maybe sharing this buck with, your good buddy there, Ross, and then the neighbor, your other neighbor that he shared the picture with it the year before. Now, when you were showing those guys, what were their thoughts on it?
so going into the 2022 season, my neighbor that sent me the picture the year before, uh, he told me, he said, I'm pretty confident you're going to have the best chance of killing that deer this year. That's what he told me ahead of time. I didn't believe him at first, but uh, he was pretty spot on the money on where that deer ended up the majority of the season and other things. He that same neighbor, he has a small excavation outfit. He came in, helped me double the size of my food plot. I ended up having the best food plot I've ever had last year, and it just drew so many does in, and I'd it'd be nothing to have 10 does in that food plot morning, night, just all over the place. And I think that's probably what ended up making that deer stay there a little more.
Yeah, yeah. And are you the only one hunting your particular piece of property?
Yes,
Okay,
I am. Mhm.
perfect.
So, your game plan was to try to put more food on the farm to keep the does, which would in turn hopefully keep him there. So you were taking a page out of your buddy Jeff Ross's book of like, hey, you keep those does there, you keep them happy, keep them low pressure, you're going to be good. I think that's key. I think you did the right thing. I think you got the right advice. I probably would have done the same thing. That's awesome that just, that little tweak there, little, I say little, it's probably a lot of work to do it, but
Mhm.
that was a game changer, I'm gonna guess, wasn't it?
Oh, 100%. It was probably the biggest game changer I had last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Now,
probably why your buddy, if he was a betting man, that he was betting that he would end up over on you because he probably seen the evolution of kind of what was happening around that area.
Oh, 100%. It, that buddy, he's probably the biggest herd influencer in the area. He just has enough acreage, and only shoots upper age class deer for the most part. So yeah, he's definitely a herd influencer in the area. So where he says something's gonna be, try and listen to it, take
Mm-hmm.
whatever advice I can from
You bet.
For sure. So when you got a picture of this deer finally, when you went and told your buddy Jeff, what did he say? Like, what was that all about?
him. He was just mind blown at how big that deer ended up getting. It was
Yeah.
just it's hard to put into words all this stuff sometimes, but
Yeah.
I mean, never in my life did I think that I would be in the position I was in past couple years. So it was just wild.
Yeah, and it's gonna mean a lot too, coming from a guy like Jeff that's been around a really high end caliber bucks. It sounds like kind of for his entire hunting career, and him saying, "Dude, that's the biggest deer I've ever seen before."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think his best was in the lower 190s, I think, but he has
Man.
had a pile of really nice deer.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. Did he at that moment, did he tell you anything like, just keep a positive mindset or do this? Did he give you any little words of wisdom of like, be careful hunting this deer, don't overpressure him, anything like that?
Not really. He just said go get them. That's
I love it.
I don't.
Yeah.
Don't mess it up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's cool. So rounding out September, I mean, you got to be excited. So coming into, you guys are an October 1 start. So what's your game plan going into October and how did that all unfold?
So my game plan uh was just to hunt every right wind direction I could. Uh, I had great access to most all my stands at that point. I had a stand hung for every wind direction on various parts of the property, and my plan was to just throw myself out there as much as I could be, and just make sure I didn't spook deer, make sure I didn't, uh, make sure I wasn't, make sure that my presence wasn't there without, but I still was there. Just uh,
If you were going to be there with a purpose, kind of thing.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's about right.
And don't try to blow the farm up. Basically, go there calculated with a purpose, like David said. Still keep your finger on the pulse, kind of thing, but just like be easy with it. Like you said, like you're walking on eggshells. That's how we hunt around here too.
Mm.
So yeah, yeah, I definitely get that part. So what was the first day you sat for him? Did you go in October 1st and sit for him?
Oh, of course. Yeah,
I love
yeah.
it.
I knew the first couple, or I knew that I probably wouldn't really have much of a chance until at the earliest later in October because he was still nocturnal on every picture. But I mean, I'm not going to sit at the house knowing he's out there. So.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Well, I mean, I guess we should ask, we talked about that September 14th picture. And after that, was he still being active on your property leading up until opening day?
So yes, he was still showing up maybe one or two nights out of the week up until about October 1st. And then at I think it's the first week of October I decided that I just have to have cell cameras, and so I put them out and they were a game changer, being able to get pictures 30 seconds after they were taken and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. Did it sounded like he was pretty regular, or at least, I mean, for me, if he's showing up a couple nights a week, I mean, I feel pretty good about my odds. But by the sound and the demeanor of your voice right then, it almost sounded like once October 1st hit that you maybe had this feeling that like your presence was affecting him. Like, did he drop off a little bit once season opened?
Actually, he didn't really drop off at all. Uh, he actually started showing up more in October. It was turned into in the second, third week in October, all the way to the end. He ended up starting to show up 3 to 4 times a week.
Oh,
And
jeez.
Wow.
I had trail cam pictures of him walking by 15 minutes after I left the deer stand a couple times, and it just for some reason it seemed like I wasn't bothering him at all. I guess my all my precautions were saved me on that, but
Yeah. When I hear guys, and even myself at times, having those pictures of a deer, and I had this happen to me just 2 years ago, where when they show up like that 15, 20, 30 minutes later, after kind of you got out of there, those pictures always just make me wonder. It's almost like that sixth sense, or like they were in a position they were there watching, or they listened, they knew you were actually there, but they're actually just kind of waiting to hear you leave that area.
see, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've definitely had that happen quite a few times in the past, but with this deer is just kind of a little bit different. I never really got the feeling that he knew I was there
Okay.
the whole time I was hunting. It was probably one of the weirdest experiences I've had with a buck, that he just seemed like he didn't care that I was there, but he wasn't going to show up in daylight quite yet.
Mhm. Now, October 1st is here. You got this deer on your mind, you're hunting them and everything, but there's some other things going on too, right? I mean, with your buddy Jeff, there were some things that were transpiring. You can you elaborate a little bit on that and like what was going on?
Yeah. So going into, I think it was a couple days or maybe the weekend before bow season started, Jeff got bad enough that he was put in, or that they were putting him into hospice. So, and I found that out a few days later. I'm sitting up in a stand on October 1st, and that's whenever I decided that I was going to name that deer after him because of all the backstory with him. And so, yeah, I ended up getting sent to a job fairly close to my house. So I was either bow hunting or visiting him uh, every night after work. I think I was making at least one visit a week to him, trying to make two sometimes, and every other day I was bow hunting. So
I gotcha. So he's on hospice and not doing the greatest, and you're just, good on you, man. Good on you for making those trips over there and still talking to him and being with him. That's shows what kind of person you are, a very good person. And um, still with like, at this point when you have a good friend that's like it's life or death kind of thing, deer hunting and a lot of things don't matter.
Mhm.
It's kind of crazy that you have a once in a lifetime deer that you're chasing, that you've talked to him about this, and all this stuff is transpiring. I can only imagine what was going through your head, because you've got a very excited, part, and then you got this like sad part as well, and you're trying to accomplish both, like try to please both. And I can only imagine how that felt and how to deal with that.
so he was it was yeah, it was definitely a challenge, but he kept me going like on that deer. He every time I'd show him a new trail cam picture, that'd be what I could do to get him to perk up whenever I went and visited him and whatnot. Uh, he just every time I went and visited him, I mean, no matter how bad he was getting, he always told me I better go out there and get him. So
That's
it
awesome.
was just uh, yeah, I felt like I had to keep trying as hard as I kept telling him that I was going to bring that deer to him whenever I got him. So, yeah, that definitely kept me going even harder than I probably would have been.
For sure. You know, take us through the rest of the season. Like, how did everything, late play out? How did it transpire? Some encounters and all that stuff. Like, let's get into the season and how everything played out.
So, I started off in early October, and I was just hunting every correct one that I could, which I was hunting almost every day. And I didn't really catch any wind of them in daylight at all, and for most of October. And then towards the end, rut activity is starting to pick up. I mean, I'm enjoying every hunt. I'm seeing quite a few deer and of course the squirrels and the birds and stuff. So every hunt was enjoyable. Uh, but towards the end of October, uh, I thought for sure he was going to start getting him up on his feet during daylight. Uh, the first encounter I had with him, I think, was in late October. Uh, there was a lot of rut activity going on that night. I was sitting in a small valley that feeds into a bigger valley, and I had just bucks chasing does all night long, just young bucks, and I think there was like 3 or 4 does, and there's probably 6 or 7 bucks trying to chase all these 4 does around. It was just madness, deer going everywhere. And it was getting right to the point of dark, where I had maybe 10 minutes of light left. And these deer are still just going crazy. And all of a sudden, I hear a deep grunt that's noticeably deeper than the rest of all these other bucks. And I'm like, I immediately in my head, I knew, I was like, that's got to be him. So, uh, without skipping a beat, I grunted back at him. All these other bucks, they took off. They didn't want nothing to do with it. They knew it was coming. I never seen anything like that in my life. And he, it, by the time he started working his way around, it was already well past dark, and I could still hear deer moving, so I couldn't get out of the stand. It took 30 minutes, but he slowly worked up around and behind me. Uh, and he ended up 10 yards behind my stand, 30 minutes after dark. I turned around where he was walking away, and I saw his rack, knew it was him, but there wasn't a thing I could do about it. But so that
Just
was
puke.
yeah, it was wild. Uh, that ended up being the first encounter I had with him from a deer stand.
Okay. Okay.
What were you thinking like later that night? Were you just like unbelievable, like 10 yards, but too dark. Two, you know, have we even talked like a 250-ish type animal right there? Like I wouldn't be sleeping. No chance.
Pounding beers.
Yeah,
I
Just
don't think I
pounding beers. Just Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm just,
well, in you almost at that point, obviously a lot of season left and wanting to kill that, but like there's gotta be a little bit of you were like, dude, that was a success. Like I had this thing in bow range, it was just too dark, like a world
mm-hmm.
class animal, world class, once in a lifetime.
Yep. Yeah, that I don't even know what I would have thought on that.
Yeah.
So that happens late October. I mean, is he still showing up in on camera then every day or every other day? How frequent
Oh
is it?
yeah, it was probably 3, 4, 5 nights a week he'd show up on camera. That mostly they were in the middle of the night, and every once in a while I'd get one at like 6 a.m. or just right after dark, and just kind of wondering what you can do to try and get ahead of them, which plays into my second encounter. Um, but he, so I guess I'll just go right into the second
Yeah.
encounter. Uh, I mean, I'm already, I've been going hard at hunted all of October, every living second I could, and rolling to November, and he's finally starting to get in my head a little bit that maybe I just need to take a step away. I was going to go to this other property I can hunt. I knew there was about 150-inch 10 pointer that was going to be my second buck I was going to go after this year. He is 5.5 years old as well. So I was like, I think I'm going to wake up and I'm going to go there in the morning. It was a Saturday, I believe. And I wake up and it was like 6:20 something. It was like right before daylight, maybe 20 minutes before daylight. And my cell camera sends me a picture of him in my food plot. So immediately I start thinking, I'm like, how can I get around this deer? Like I know he came from this way by the camera. Uh, I cannot get to this stand in time because I'll be too close to cutting him off. I may end up running right into him, and I'm not going to go the way he came from. As odds of him going back that way are slim. So I kind of picked this stand that's across the property that I thought maybe if he's out looking for does, he might end up coming by this stand. And uh, I still thought it'd be a slim chance, but I was like, I got to try it. Uh, so I get in the stand and it's windy. It was just insanely windy and it's kind of drizzling. And about 30 minutes into this, I'm sitting here thinking, like, what am I doing up here? There ain't going to be a deer moving in this. And it was maybe an hour after dark or after sunrise. Uh, and I'm just hadn't seen a deer yet. I was starting to think that I'm just kind of wasting my time with the weather we have. And I look over, he's walking 50 yards from me. I think it was around 8 in the morning, or give or take. And immediately, I knew where he was walking. I knew where he was going. There's no clear shot. I'm not comfortable shooting that far to that big a deer, anyways. So I grunted at him. He stopped, looked at me, started taking a couple more steps. So I was like, I gotta try something harder. I snort wheezed at him, but stopped, looked at me again, took a few more steps. I snort wheezed again, stopped, looked at me, and just kept on going. I was like, well, that didn't work, but I was completely stoked just to even see him in daylight, uh, even being that close.
Right. Yeah. That's another win though, man. I mean, you've come close twice, and gun season is at the end of November for you, right? Like the first gun
Uh,
season.
it's the third, I think it's like the 11th or something. So it's kind of towards the middle of
Oh,
November.
okay. Okay.
Or no, it's the weekend after that, I believe.
The weekend before Thanksgiving, I think, right?
Yep, weekend
Okay.
before and
Yep.
weekend after.
Okay. So you have this encounter, then go into the next big deal. What happens next?
So, sadly, that ended up being the day that the funeral was being held for my friend Jeff. He passed away a few days before that, and just coincidentally, my first daylight encounter with him was the day that his funeral was. So, as in my head, I was like, this is pretty crazy at this point, but
Yeah,
so
I don't think it was just a coincidence, man.
I don't believe so either.
Right. Yeah. That's
So after I got done with that morning, I ended up getting down and going to the funeral.
mm-hmm. Yeah. What was something had to be going through your mind of of Jeff saying, you got to get out there and get him. You're going to get out there. You got to go. So like, was that in your mind? Was he in your mind? Just like, you knew what he'd be saying to you, like, get out there, go do it. Right.
Yep. I didn't even skip a beat. I I knew that's what he wanted me to do. I knew he wanted me to try my best to put a tag on this deer. So uh, I just I kept trying as hard as I could, even after he was gone.
Now, what day was that? Do you remember?
Um, I may be able to figure it out.
Well, and you're sitting at two encounters, with this buck you call Ross, and it's still somewhat. It sounds like it's still somewhat early November, where you gotta feel like you're still in the game still. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
you have firearm season looming. It's coming in, but there's still some hunting to do.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I'm
Uh,
trying to see if you have the date on here, what you sent me to, and I'm not picking it up.
I'm trying to find it myself.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's just crazy how things happen like that,
Yeah, it is.
and but although this is the dynamic, you got the sad part of what's going on in your life, but then you're trying to please the happy part as well. But the good thing is like Jeff was always very positive to you, very like, hey man, go get him. Like, I'm glad you guys had excuse me, had that friendship, because that's what kept you going at it, because you knew that's what he would have said, and that ultimately kept you in the game too.
Oh, 100%. It was November 5th was the second encounter.
Okay.
Huh.
And then what happened next? Any more encounters or any more word of the deer, or camera
So
pictures?
November 6th, uh, I I went to the funeral on the 5th, and then I ended up getting over, and I went straight back to the deer stand, and hunted that evening. Didn't see a whole lot. And November 6th, uh, I went and I climbed in a different stand because I didn't think that in my mind, I didn't really think he would go by the same stand that he went by the day before, just because the does typically hung out on a separate or on the opposite side of the property. So I went into one of my favorite stands. I had the perfect wind, and uh, I just knew that he daylighted the day before, and I was excited to be there. I was going to see what I could make happen, whether it happened or not. And maybe an hour after sunrise, I have a doe and with her twins go by about 40 yards away in front of me, and they cut onto my neighbor's property. And then I had another fawn come behind me, and I'm just sitting there. I'm texting my buddy that lives a little bit away, and we're like, "This is gonna show back up or not?" We're literally texting at this time, and I look up, and he is walking right down the trail. Them two does just went down, or the doe with her two fawns went down. And you could tell he's looking for a doe. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, I threw my phone down, and I knew if I didn't do anything, he was going to end up on the neighbor's property, and that day would be over. Uh, and I did not have a shot where he was coming through. It was 40 yards, but there's tree branches and stuff in the way. So I did what I thought. I was like, well, it didn't work yesterday, but I'm going to try it again. I grunted at him three times, and that turned him on a dime that day. I don't know what it was from one day to the other, but he turned on a dime and he started coming down, and I knew exactly where my opening was going to be. I drew back 35 yards, is ranged it a million times from all the other days I've been there this year, and uh, he steps in that opening at 35 yards, and it kind of happened quick. I may have rushed it a touch, but I shot, and I originally thought I hit him low and 6 inches back. That was my initial thought,
Okay.
because I saw a little indentation whenever after I shot. So I was like, I was all excited, already called 10 people. He took off barreling like a deer that got shot, stopped at like 80 yards away. I was like, well, that kind of looks like a gut shot. And then it is a gut shot, he'd stop after a little bit and just kind of slowly walk off. So I was like, it's not a good shot, but I hit him. And that wasn't the case at all. So after I already called a couple of my close friends and family, and uh, I wait pretty well an hour to get down. And by this point, I got people that text me and trying to call me that I hardly ever talk to, trying to figure out what's going on.
It's amazing how that
Deer,
works, right?
yeah, deer of that caliber will do that.
So I climb down and I walk over there and I'm like, where's the blood? I don't see nothing. I didn't see an arrow either. So I was like, well, if it may have been I thought I was a little far back, so maybe it didn't start bleeding right away. So I started walking right down the trail. You can tell where he tore out of there. And I made about 40 yards. I was like, something don't seem right here. So I didn't want to bump him at all. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to go back. I'll wait a couple more hours and I'm going to go in. And I ended up walking back to right where I shot at him. And I found my arrow there broken into 4 pieces.
Ooh,
And not a drop of blood on the arrow. Broadhead looked like it was brand new, not a thing messed up. And immediately, right then and there, my heart just sank. I was trying to find something on the arrow that told me it was gut shot or something. I didn't really want a gut shot because I wanted it to be a good shot, but I was trying to find something to cling to make it seem like I hit him, and I couldn't find nothing.
yeah.
Uh,
Speck of
and
blood, a little bit of hair or something.
yeah, wasn't a bit of hair, nothing there. I was like, so my heart sank. And looking back on it, uh, I believe what happened was I hit a tiny tree branch that I did not, probably one of the only tree branches I didn't cut out of the way. And I think what happened was that arrow hit that tree branch, cartwheeled. I think the back end of the arrow hit him where I thought I shot him.
Oh,
And that's
shit.
what left that indention in my mind that I thought I hit him. And then I think he stepped on the arrow on his way out. And that's what shattered it into 4 pieces.
That's unbelievable. That's
Oh, oh, oh.
crazy. Oh gosh.
And you know, and you can't help but just think, like we're talking about a 250-ish inch buck. You know what I mean? Like I, to think you had to have gone from the highest of highs thinking, yeah, maybe it's not the greatest shot, but I got an arrow in this animal. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's probably gonna die eventually. To like you said, like listening to you say that you were just looking for anything to show you like you hit them, like you were looking for that little sliver of hope that we were at least gonna have something to track at the end of the night.
Yeah, correct. And yeah, it went from hero to zero real quick.
Oh man, that's terrible. That sucks. Oh gosh. So
When
now, what were you gonna say?
when it, I wouldn't be answering my phone for the rest of the night.
No,
Because
I'd have
they're all
smashed
calling,
it.
going, "Hey, what's the word? When we tracking?" I'm packing the backpack full of beer right now. What time you want me there?
Just kidding. He was 130. That's it. Just kidding.
Yeah, because he lost the side.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
so
I,
go ahead.
I guess that's a point we kind of left out a little bit ago. 2022, the whole town knew about this deer. Yeah, there was no hiding at that point. So
Mm-hmm.
one person found out that they shot it, thought I hit him, spread to the whole town within a half hour pretty
Oh my
well.
gosh.
Uh,
Oh gosh. So
Did you have anyone showing up at your house that night or that next day, just kind of poking, looking for information?
no, I didn't really have nothing too crazy like that because I did start sending out texts on what actually happened to try and
mhm.
keep the texts from coming. But it was say it happened pretty quick, and yeah, everyone knew that I missed that deer just about as quick as I thought I hit him. So I didn't
Yeah,
really have too many people show up at the house.
yeah, yeah. Now that day was that your last encounter with Ross?
That was the last encounter I had with.
Okay.
That's gonna forever be burned in your memory, man. Like that whole I bet you replay that 10 times a day.
Oh, yeah, I definitely do. Those first couple days, it was every 10 seconds
Oh my
they got
gosh.
replayed.
Yeah.
So
So what happened next?
so that landed on a Sunday, and my boss, he'd been really good about uh, if he's a big deer hunter too, and he wanted me to get that deer. So if I thought I had a chance in the evening, he'd let me leave 30 minutes early to go get in the stand and whatnot. So he found out I missed it. He told me just don't even come in the morning. He said, go try and hunt that deer again.
Oh, good boss. Man, kudos to him. Shout out to him.
Yep.
So, let's say, so I kept going. And I mean, I wasn't on my A game after that. I
Mhm.
realized that later. I started getting a little more aggressive than I should have been. Uh, and I only ended up getting one more trail cam picture of him after that experience. I thought originally that it didn't spook him too much, and I don't know if he was just tied up on doe after that point, but I only had one trail cam picture at night after that.
Okay.
How long after that encounter did you get that picture?
It was, I think it was either a week or a week and a half, but
Okay.
I did have one of my neighbors. They got a picture of him, which they got pictures of both sides of his body, clear as day, and that really kind of soothed in my head that I didn't wound this deer 100%. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was 2 or 3 days later they got that picture. So
Yeah.
uh,
But I mean, that also had to be a little bit of relief knowing, like, because, even though you're looking for a little bit of evidence and you're not finding any, there had to be still a little bit of piece of you wondering, did did I hit anything?
Mhm.
And then, probably feeling bad if you possibly wounded them. But then, you know, you circle back to the beginning of the story about having that good relationship with your neighbors. And that's a perfect example where like it paid off because they're showing you like, hey, here he is. Here's his right side. Here's his left side. He looks completely healthy.
Yeah, that's wild.
uh,
Now, coming into the end of November, gun season's coming on now. So what's going through your head now? I mean, you still got to be pedal to the metal trying to figure them out, right? I mean, gun season's looming here. Like, what happened when it coming into gun season?
so uh, I don't I do gun hunt every year that I still have a buck tag, but I don't really enjoy it as much as bow hunting. But I knew that I had to keep trying my best for those steers, so
Oh yeah.
I went and I sighted in the gun like 10 properties away to make sure I didn't scare them. uh, I was getting all ready. I was like, with all my neighbors out here this weekend, I want to be out here too, just in case. You never know what's going to happen. And it was a few days before gun season. I was we were just about to leave. It was maybe 3:20 or so, and well, I need to backtrack just a little bit to that same day. So that day, my buddy down the road, that deer was on a doe right like 60 yards off the road. Uh, and people noticed it. There was like 10 cars on the side of the road taking pictures and stuff, just uh, of this deer. And he was 60, 70 yards off the road. And this was at 11 in the morning or 10 or 11 in the morning. And so my buddy's telling me, and uh, I'm telling him to go in there and get him. And he actually ended up shooting one of my other target bucks that morning. And he's like, "Oh, I gotta go track this deer." I was like, "I'll help you track that deer after work. Just go after this deer.
Yeah.
It's on your property, uh, heads in a doe." So I mean, he was pretty dumb at that point. So finally, after a lot of convincing, he went out there and he snuck around a stand where he thought that deer would come through, and uh, was there for maybe 3 hours or so, and maybe an hour in, that doe that I think it's a doe that buck was with came by, and she just went by 10, 15 yards looking back, and nothing else ever came out. So he was eventually just got down, and I guess that deer just got done. I guess Ross just got done with that doe, and he went off to find a different doe. So that deer, so I'm sitting here at work, end of the day, ready to get home, uh, and I get a text from a friend that said that Ross just got killed, and I was like, there ain't no way. He was just over on this property right here, and that property's a mile and a half away. How, like, there ain't no way. And then he sent me a picture. I was like, that's him. So I
Oh
bolted out
man.
there. I just, I got home as quick as I could. I didn't even know the kid who shot him yet.
Hmm.
I just, I rolled right up to the property and went straight up there, and I shook his hand, congratulated him, and I had to see it, but it was it was a really bittersweet moment. I was really excited for him, and I was really excited to see the deer, but kind of bitter for myself. But
Yeah. Well, it's really good to hear, and it's really cool to hear you say about, that you were also very excited for him. But run us through, like, when you pulled up there and you seen that animal, and either if he was hanging or in the back of a truck, when you first got up close and personal with him, what was your first, what were you thinking right at that moment?
really, it was excitement to even see him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wherever he was sit, they had him in a tractor bucket. They just got him out of the field, and really, my first reaction was just excitement to even be this close to that deer.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did he seem larger at that, right at that moment, than those, the encounters and watching him in the summertime? Did he feel like, just being that up close and personal with him, you're like, he is so much bigger than I ever thought he was?
um, Not really too much. I knew exactly how big he was the whole time. He was in my mind every second of every day.
Sure.
So whenever I rolled up there, I was just like, well, that's him. He was definitely the biggest deer I've ever seen in person, but he was definitely just about as big as I thought he was gonna be.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when you said that the kid that killed him, you referred to him as a kid. Is he a younger guy?
He is a younger guy. Well, he's actually a little bit older than me. I think he's 28 or 29.
Yeah.
Uh,
How was he handling that situation? Like, was he just, oh man, he already drank a case of beer before you got there.
that they were cracking their first ones, him and the property owner, but he actually got killed on the property that he summered on. Uh,
Really?
so he left my buddy's property, uh, bolted a mile and a half through a deep ravine that kind of runs along the edge of my property, and all the way up across. He had to cross or two roads, and it was 1:45 whenever uh, that guy was just getting back into his stand, and he said he just sat down, and it wasn't 15 minutes later. He saw him come huffing and puffing out looking for does. He put the horns together and he came right in.
So
Man.
he covered some serious ground that day, like some serious ground.
Yes, he did. And that right there, just because of everyone watching him along the side of the road, that started the rumor mill in a bad way.
Oh,
And
I
Mm.
bet.
I spent weeks telling people the real story just so, I mean, I wouldn't want anyone talking bad about me if I was in the shoes. So I was trying to set the story straight to everyone that, no, this was 100% legal. I saw the deer leave the field. Like, I didn't even know the guy hardly. So I was like, I got no reason to lie. And
Hmm.
yeah, it was,
Yeah.
just,
So
it was unbelievable to most people, but most people didn't know that that was a normal place for that deer to go. So,
yeah, yeah. So Ross is dead, and in the summertime, you guessed him at 250 ish. Now that he's dead, we actually know his final score. Why don't you tell the listeners what Ross finally scored out?
so the day that he was killed, I went up there and I'm, I decided, or I asked the kid if I could put a tape on him, and he said, "Yeah, go ahead." Uh, I taped him out at 238 inches, and a couple days later, he had him officially scored at 243 and 3/8 inches. So he ended up being a little bit bigger than I taped him out to be.
So where
243.
where does that rank in like your county or your state? That's got to rank somewhere.
I'd bet it'd be the top in the county. Uh, it's hard to beat the state. The Brewster buck
The
is like
Brewster Buck is,
330. Yeah,
yeah.
that
Yep.
one's hard to beat. But
Yeah,
I think it was I could be wrong. I haven't looked into it too far, but I think it could be the new Buckmaster record for semi non, or I think it was, fine, what classes as like semi non-typical or something, or semi irregular, I think is what how it was worded.
okay, I
Yep.
gotcha.
Yep.
That's
Because
wild, man.
he's basically kind of like a mainframe 7x6, but then he's got 22 countable points this year. So he's got drop time splits. He's got a lot of splits. That's kind of
Hmm.
a big character that he has, but he has everything you want in a world class animal, man. He is awesome.
For sure.
Yeah, he was amazing. I'm just grateful that I got the chance to even hunt a deer like that, let less have a few encounters with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And hearing how we rutted, I mean, you can only hope that those genes are out there running around now.
That leads into what I did after deer season.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Let's hear it.
yeah, we got to hear it.
So I could not get myself to sit in a deer stand again after he was killed, even though there's a few nice deer in the area. I started trapping harder than I ever had before for coyotes, and I think I got just in a 3 mile radius of like my home farm. I think I was uh, at close to 20 top predators, so coyote, fox, etc., and mostly were coyotes. So I had the mindset of like I gotta hammer these guys as hard as I can to make sure any fawns that or any does that
Mm-hmm.
he bred have
Yeah.
fawns.
Yep. Good for you, man. That's a manager right there. That's managing not only the deer herd, but also the predator population that needs to be managed as well. So you're doing your part, man. Good on you.
Well, thank you.
So anyway, dude, I greatly appreciate you coming on and doing this. Awesome story. The biggest deer we've ever talked about on this podcast. Thank you for, reaching out and wanting to do this. I had a lot of fun. Uh, all I can say is thank you, and I'll let David speak for himself. But I hope you had fun doing it. I hope it was a good experience for you. But man, greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, it's been a blast. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on and telling your story. These stories could be hard to tell, you know what I mean, because it's kind of like, what they say, like opening up a wound again, but um, you, there's the series is called One Giant Mistake, right? But there's still some wins in your story. Those encounters, putting yourself in the game with a 243-inch animal. I mean, those are check mark in the win box in some of those areas. But there's still, like that deer is probably going to surface on some magazines somewhere or some pictures where you're going to be able to say that, dude, you hunted that deer. You were in the game with him quite a bit. I mean, the
Yeah.
amount of time he spent where you got to hunt, man, that's it's really awesome. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you coming on here and telling your story today.
So, oh, I had a blast, guys, and thank you for even having a podcast like this where we can talk about it. Definitely is like opening a wound that that doesn't want to be open, but I knew that I I like to talk about some of this stuff, and I mean, if even one little part of this story can help someone else kill a nice deer, then it's worth it.
Heck yeah,
Yeah,
man.
for sure.
Heck yeah, Bryce. Well, dude, good luck this predator season and good luck chasing that next big one next year.
All right, thank you very much.